Well, hello and welcome to this webinar with the Illinois Academy of Family Physicians. I'm Ginny Flynn, Vice President of Communications and Member Engagement, and we're really happy to welcome today from the AAFP, Angie Lanigan, who is the Career and Practice Strategist, and she's going to give us a tour through the AAFP's Career Benchmark Dashboard. As they say, knowledge is power, and for that, I can say Angie is a superhero. We're excited to welcome you today. And Angie, take us on a tour through the dashboard and we'll finish up with any questions that we get along the way. Welcome, Angie.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm really excited to be here today to share the dashboard. This is a resource we developed in 2023 and it launched at the end of 2023. And we are very excited to use this as an interactive resource that supports you at every turn during your career. This is the URL for the dashboard, so I highly encourage you to go to www.aafp.org/worth. This is where you can get logged into the dashboard. When you go to that website, you'll have to log in as a member because this is a member-only resource. But this is what you'll see. This is our main landing page. And you can see we have 6 main questions on the page. What I want you to take away from this is there are like 42 questions sorted into 6 buckets. So if you want to see more information, you have to click those blue links. Um, this is the first interactive dashboard with family medicine specific information. So it will tell you a little bit about different kinds of roles, like whether you are a faculty, whether you're in leadership or administration, a practicing family physician, a researcher, a residency director. It allows you to see annual total compensation and benefits, and then some information about work-life balance and job satisfaction. Once you open up the Explore link, you can access the filters. And this is what you need for looking at the variables that are important to you. So if you know that you want to work in Illinois at an FQHC, you can see what your peers would be making who responded to the survey. Um, as you can see, the total number of responses is on the screen. We had over 7,500 people complete it, which is 10%, over 10% of active membership. We had a statistically significant sample, and there are, if you can explore any state, there are privacy guards up if there are not more than 11 responses once you start applying the filters. And I can show you that in a little bit, what you need to do if you run into a privacy guard. But for the most part, there is data that you can look at and just compare different variables. Using the dashboard is a little bit tricky. There's a few things that I want to hit on that will show you how to get what you want. And the first thing that I want to be sure to explain is that our dashboard includes both part-time and full-time information. And many other associations who offer similar dashboards only include full-time. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're using the filter. Since this is full-time and part-time averaged, this number 259 skews a little bit lower than if you were just looking at part-time. So what you want to do to use the filters is click the Explorer. So this is what the Explorer compensation looks like. I'm going to play a short little video. Eh, Once you, oops, that did not work. You're going to click on a filter. You will drop down. I'm going to click full-time. Then I am going to choose the state or territory I'm interested in and then choose experience. For this example, I'm saying I have 13 to 19. I know I want to work in an outpatient setting, so I'm going to choose academic health center or ambulatory clinical care. I'm going to close the filter. On the one side, you can see the money, and on the other side, you can see how many people are included in that response. So there were 63 responses. And then I can scroll down and see all the multitude of questions that are included in the compensation bucket. Some tips for using the filters. you want to think about where do you want to work. So you can use the state and territory filter. If you are trying to get, if you're looking at a state where there aren't a lot of responses, you might think about doing a regional thing. So you would click on the states around it as well. Um, what type of job or day-to-day work appeals to you? So some of the filters that might apply to that are a primary position. So do you want to be a residency director? Do you want to be a researcher? Do you want to be in leadership? Another filter is the clinical setting. So that'll tell you like where do you see patients. So anything, and this is confusing to a little bit of people, to some people. If you're interested in working in somewhere like an FQHC or just an outpatient clinic, all of that under clinical setting would be ambulatory outpatient clinic. Or if you know you want to work in a hospital, you would click hospital, or you want to work in hospice. That's where you would find those things. And the other place where you might explore is under employer. So this is like who gives you your paycheck. And that could be a academic health system, it could be an independent practice, it could be um, a hospital, it could be a telemedicine company, it could be industry. So you have to kind of look in those three places to explore things that you might. So if you don't see it in one filter, check one of these other ones. And the same is who do you want to work for? Employer also falls under that bucket. But we also have a checkbox for do you want to own your own practice? So there is a yes or no for sole or partial practice owner. And then in the employer filter, you can check self. And then the other thing is how much experience do you have? So you will find that under the filter years since residency. The dashboard is great for many things, but there are a few limitations that I'll cover at the end. But the dashboard is great for determining if a job offer is in the ballpark. So you might think, I have no idea what my peers might make. So this is a great resource to go and look, is this offer in the ballpark? It can provide information about work-life balance or clinical autonomy for different types of roles. It provides a general idea of how compensation is structured. So when you look at the compensation piece, you can see 73% of my peers have a base salary and 40% have bonus or incentives. So, and then you can look at how are their bonus and incentives, what are they getting paid for? But you can't see 70% of my salary is base and 30% is incentives. We don't have that information. Um, we don't have that kind of granular detail. Before we go there, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to show the dashboard and we'll go through a couple different scenarios. So here we are back to the compensation bucket and this green asterisk tells me that I have a filter on. So if I open the filter, I can see that I have already applied the full-time filter and I've applied year since residency 1 to 3 and 4 to 7. And again, if you look right here, it can tell you how many people in the total sample are filtered, and then you can see the average compensation. So nationally, the average compensation for new physicians is about 250,000. This next question will show you the distribution. So 3% of people are making $100,000 or less, and 3% are making 400,000 or more. And everybody else is about here in the 2 to 300 range. Here is an example of when I talked about how you can see what the structure of a compensation is, and that's base salary, incentives, productivity-based RVUs, or not productivity-based non-RVUs. You can see how people's incentive or bonus are based on. You can see benefits. So as I mentioned, we are on my slide alluded to updating it. We're going to change the wording of this question to help. We found that some employers were looking at this to compare what they might want to offer. And so we're going to try to get more people to say, my company offers this. Because if you see here, only 35% of people said that they receive maternity leave. And so we don't know if it's just men saying, if you received it, like, did you take it? So we want to be very clear that if it's offered to you, we'd like you to click it. Um, as you can see, the average or most people are receiving 20 to 29 days off of PTO. And then you can see that most people receive between $1,000 and $4,000 of CME allowance. And then this question right here, what is your total sign-on bonus? This was not asked to everyone. So if you're scrolling through and you see this little book, you can click it and then you have to scroll to the top to read the box. But you can see how many people answered this question, and it was only shown to people who had been in their job for 3 years or less. And less than 2% of our sample was fully remote workers. If you want to navigate back, you can click this back button and you will be back at the front. The other data we have in here, as I mentioned, explore levels of satisfaction. So on this one, I don't have any filters applied, so we can go ahead and apply some filters. So we'll try, let's say just a regular practicing family physician, full time. We're gonna look in Illinois. And we're going to say years since residency. We've got 67 people in that bucket, and the average job satisfaction is 3.6, which is about the national average. The ability to maintain work-life balance is 3.5. Autonomy is 4. And this is interesting if you go in and you change the primary position. So let's say I'm a practicing family physician, but I'm thinking about taking a leadership role. And we are going to take off the state filter because as you can see, we hit a privacy guard. So I'll take that off. If we take off the state filter, we still have new physicians, but we can see that the job satisfaction went up a little bit. Work-life balance went down a little bit. Clinical autonomy, about the same. And if anytime you want to take off a filter, you can take off a filter just by clicking the X. Usually it's not responding. Here we go. A few other things I'd like to show you. What best describes your primary position? So this is work information. I'm going to go ahead and apply full-time. I'm going to do new physicians. So we have you can see all full-time people. What describes your primary position? So you can see 85% of these people indicated that they are practicing family physicians, about 10% are faculty or professor, and about 2% are in leadership. You can see where people work. So a vast majority are working for a hospital or health system, and the next highest is federally qualified health center. You can see that where people are seeing patients. So 83% are in an ambulatory clinical practice, and some are hospitalists, some are in academic health centers. And this is one way that you can kind of change the filters and see where people work and what they're doing. Another, if you're ever in a position where you're thinking about transitioning to a new role, this exploring roles is a good place to go. You can look at how much time people are spending doing certain tasks. So this is where you would really lean into this primary position. So if we look at residency director, we can see that these people spend a lot of time teaching, or a lot of them spend time teaching, doing clinical care, leadership administration, and research. And then we look at these graphs, which tell us approximately how much time you spend doing these things. So 34% of people indicated that they spend 21 to 30% of their time in clinical practice. These are a little bit confusing because we're talking about percents of percents, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to understand. And you can see that 6% said they spend 41 to 50% of their time in clinical practice or patient care. And here, 23% said they spend 41 to 50% of their time doing leadership, and 10%, 97 said they spent 1 to 10% of their time in research, and 13.9% say they spend 31 to 40% of their time teaching. And these change a lot based on the role that you're exploring. So you can see if we change it to practicing family physician, these graphs are going to look very different, where 58% say they spend 91 to 100% of their time caring for patients, and 56% say that they spend 1 to 10% of their time in leadership or administration. So these vary greatly depending on which role you choose. And it's kind of fun just to play around here to see, oh, if I want to take this job as a residency director, how would I be spending my time? What would that look like in work-life balance? It's interesting to dive into the data. We also have we know a lot of family physicians are piecing together jobs because they want to, or they've got multiple roles within their organization, and some people have side hustles. And so we wanted to make sure we explore that within our data. And you can see that for people, about 2,600 of our respondents have secondary sources of income. You can see like how they're paid, um, who they are working for. So you can see a vast majority of these people are doing something that they are self-employed. Um, we don't know who they're working for necessarily or what they're doing, but this kind of tells you, I might be doing something like locums on the side, or I have a medical director of a local government, or I might do some reviews for an insurance company. There's a lot of options. So we can get in and explore another compensation thing. I'm going to go remove. I'll add a primary filter here. So we'll do practicing family physician. So we've got about 252K. If we are interested in a practicing family physician, let's compare that to a residency director. And then we can compare that to leadership and administration. Then we can compare that to faculty and professor. So there's a lot of different things you can look at. We'll take off this filter. We can look at what if you're in independent practice. And I'll tell you, for the people who are sole or partial owners, they score higher in clinical autonomy, and the scores for work-life balance are a little bit, mostly the same. So there's a lot of good stuff in here, and we are just really excited for members to know about this resource, utilize it, especially diving into the data and not just looking at these first 6 data points. I'm going to stop sharing here and go back to the presentation. As I mentioned, we are updating the dashboard in 2025. We're so excited about the opportunity to grow this resource. And it's, as you know, compensation data is quickly outdated. So the information that you were looking at is all about people's 2022 compensation, and it's already 2025. So we need to update it. We are launching our new survey on August 1st. So please be on the lookout in your emails or on social media or at conferences you may be attending for our QR code to take the survey. We really need your help to spread the word. We set a goal to try to get at least 15% of active members to take this survey. And so we are encouraging everyone to please take the survey and then share it with your colleagues, share it with your former co-residents, share it with, your friends from medical school and family medicine. The more responses we have, the more powerful and meaningful our dashboard is. As you saw, we hit a privacy filter at one point when we were adding filters, and we really want people to be able to see as much as they want. Our updated dashboard, well, we're going to close the survey. I forgot that's not on here on 11/3, which will allow us to launch the dashboard on December 1st. The whole time the survey is open, people can still access our existing dashboard. And one of the great things that is going to add when we relaunch is that you'll be able to see some year over year comparison. So we'll be able to see growth in family medicine. And I'm excited to see what our data is going to shake out in 2025. We also know that there's a lot of information in the data. You guys are busy. So we've created these practice position profiles so that if you just need the snapshots, we've kind of pre-applied these filters for you. And but it only contains full-time respondents in these primary roles. I also just want to make you aware of a lot of the employment resources that we have through AAFP. So all of these are available at www.aafp.org/career. And we're here for you in every step of your journey. So, whether it's preparing for a job search or you've decided to start a new business or a practice, we've got stuff for you. So, preparing for a job search, we have connections to career coaches, ways to explore your options, CV templates, support for a CV review. What in your job search, we have a job board. We have interview questions and guides for you to kind of prepare. And we have the dashboard so you can review your job offers and your employment contracts. Again, the dashboard is really important. We have information on how to critically review your contract and some tips on negotiating. For starting your new position, we have resources for everything you didn't learn in residency, and we have resources for moving from employed to independent practice. As I mentioned, we've got all of these are links. So this, I believe this presentation will be posted and these links should be live to make it real easy for you to get there. Um, we talked about some of the different ways you can like explore career pathways, but AFP will be launching some career pathway content. It's not ready yet, but it will be by summertime. And so that'll be on our website as well. If you're considering a career change, you might investigate working with a career coach. On Career Link, our job board, there is also a way to connect with coaches. So you're going to go to job seekers, you drop down to career planning, and then you'll see this thing for coaching. Anybody with a heart is also actually an AAFP member who is a practicing physician, but also a coach. And if you are attending FMX in 2025, there will be free career coaching consultations. As I mentioned, our job board is aafpcareerlink.org. You would want to go to the job seekers and create a profile. When you upload your CV, there's an opportunity to get a free CV review, and there's just a little toggle button you need to turn on. What's great about our job board is that when you post your CV, it's confidential. So recruiters can look at it, but they can't see your contact information. And you'll get pinged if a recruiter is interested in talking to you. And so you have to approve it. So we don't want our members to be inundated with recruiter calls unless you're interested. CareerLink also offers some paid services for interview prep or some more in-depth resume work. So if you'd like them to help you optimize it for keywords or write your LinkedIn profile, they can do that. We have some good employer resources. If you're considering changing employers, you want to know that your employer values family medicine. So here's some 5 signs to look for. And it takes our principles to optimize family medicine employment position paper and makes it really digestible. And we work through various channels to advocate with some of the nation's largest employers, and we will continue to do that on your behalf. Employment contracts. So this is so important. We know a lot of people these days are employed, and we want you to be getting the best contract you can. So we have this like red flags, there's a checklist, and also there's an in-depth guide. And the checklist and the red flags are just like some of the distillation of what's inside the guide. But I would highly encourage you to check that out. We also have information online about how to choose a lawyer. We have a series of short videos on negotiation tips. And last, we have a member advantage partner that offers discounts to AFP members for contract review. I'm gonna skip ahead. This is some of the price points they have, and you can see with all of them, you get access to some MGMA data. You can get um, different levels of attorney involvement depending on what you want, but they also have their own database of all the contracts you've reviewed. That's all, like the last 3 in family medicine are available in a widget on our site, and so you can see it when you go to the webpage. If you are starting a new job, I mentioned we have some CME. We have a really great first year post residency transition CME package. It has 25 lessons. It covers everything from like how to code to what do I need to know for CME and licensure, contract negotiations, how to participate in AAFP governance. There's just a whole wealth of lessons. Um, it's a great package and it is available at this link. We have a lot of information online about the credentialing and privileging requirements, including how to avoid any issues, and that's important. So I would take a little bit of time and review that information. We have a great supervising non-physician clinician package that's free to members. And we've found that a lot of people, once they're leaving residency, they're now expected to be the team leaders of non-physician clinicians who maybe have 20 years of clinical experience, and that can be a little bit uncomfortable. So that's a great package if you're wondering, like, what legally do I need to know about supervision? What's allowed in my state and what isn't? How do I set boundaries and how do I set this relationship up for success? We have another CME package called Business Fundamentals for New Physicians. It's kind of a lot of the things that you maybe didn't need to focus on in residency about just the business of medicine. And we have a lot of resources for supporting your well-being, including a conference in May of this year. And if you're interested in starting or buying an independent practice, we have some resources online, including a checklist. We have a lot of great member interest group, and I would encourage you to explore these and not just if you're interested in a practice. If you have any kind of interest like women's health or telemedicine, we have a lot of member interest groups, and check them out because they are usually active online. So it's a great place to like ask questions of your colleagues or, um, some of them even have webinars. There's a broad range of things that they do to support you. We have a lot of administrative simplification, reducing burden resources, information about practice finances, compliance, and then also the FPM and AFP journals are huge resources, not just if you're interested in starting a business. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm happy to answer them. And so at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions, and I think Jenny has some.
Angie, thank you so much. You really took us through start to finish, not only the dashboard, but the journey beyond the dashboard maybe being your exploration tool, and then a lot of great tools for our members to use to make decisions and implement. So I thought maybe I would ask you how the dashboard could be useful for someone who is either in residency or just now starting to figure out the next step. Maybe they started family medicine and just don't know where they wanted, what the next step was going to be for them.
Sure. Let me go back to sharing the dashboard. I think one of the best things that you can do is jump into these filters that explore roles. So if you know, again, that little green thing was on, so I know I have filters on and I've got experience filters on. So I'm going to close those. But I think really diving into these, um, how this combination of roles and maybe settings or employers, like let's say you're exploring working in a rural health clinic, um, or you are interested in, you're like, I love outpatient, but maybe I want to be a hospitalist. So you can kind of check out how these change. Of course, you can always see the compensation, which compensation isn't everything. And I would highly encourage you to both look at these work-life balance and satisfaction and also benefits, because this number may change, but it doesn't always show you like, hey, in this setting, I get maybe 10 more days of PTO, or, my CME allowance is higher. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and it takes some time to kind of distill what is most important to you. Um, and I would encourage you, if you're using the dashboard, if you have a larger monitor, it makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to scroll so much. Check it out on a larger monitor. Definitely, it is not as friendly on a phone. So please check it out on your PC or your laptop. The phone is just not as easy to use these filters. Um, Another thing you can do instead of clinical setting, you can try uh let's see, employer. So you're interested, maybe you are thinking about, oh, we don't have enough. Let me take off primary position. You think about, hey, I want to maybe do a side hustle at a health tech or data company, or I'm thinking about locums. There's just, or you want to be self-employed. A lot of different options here to dig through. And I think, especially if you're at the point in your career where you're thinking about a transition, this is a great way to gather information. In addition, and it's just like one data point. So obviously, talk to other people who are doing it, but this can just be a starting point.
You actually made an excellent point that I was going to hit about whether it's someone who's somewhere further down the line and can still make a change in their career path and find the information to help guide those decisions, especially with the filters as far as experience and practice. So whether you are in those first 7 years or you're beyond those times and are maybe ready for a new opportunity, or for perhaps changing states, that can always happen as life and family circumstances change, that someone might need to look in a different location. One thing I did want to see if you could clarify, because each time you check a state filter, it's a state average, right? And
Correct.
that,
It is a state average.
so would you advise a way that, perhaps, by choosing multiple states and a certain um, location, like a rural health clinic or an urgent care or something that might give like a more um, or rural
Yeah.
snapshot?
So that is one of our limitations this year is that you can only see the state average. And I know there's great variability. For example, in Illinois, so in Illinois, you have Chicago and you have like the tiny tip down, or my aunt and uncle live in Staunton, which is a very tiny little town in Illinois. Um, but coming next year, we are going to ask a question specifically about rural, suburban, and urban. So you'll be able to compare that when we launch the dashboard at the end of this year. But for right now, I think your best bet, if you're interested in looking at rural options, and I know it's not perfect, but you can check like rural health clinic. Um, that's probably your best bet right now in some states. So if you're not looking in a specific state where there's great variability and you're looking at a state that is more rural, you would um, have less variability between like the urban suburban settings.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think last question we have, given the amount of information that a member can harness, and even like the wonderful snapshots that you talked about for the different profile practice or different profile types sound wonderful. Um, have you found that there is flexibility in conversations with potential employers, or are physicians running into standardization, or is there still some flexibility when looking to consider a place to work?
So I actually had this conversation. I think what you're asking about, like, do you mean is there an ability to negotiate what you want? Um,
Within those, using kind of those parameters of data, saying, can we talk about this particular thing or add this particular thing, even,
yeah.
or is there less wiggle room than there might have been in years past?
So I I have heard that same sentiment that people have the impression there's less flexibility. And I do think the from what I've heard, the employers are pushing to make all their contracts as standard as possible. But I had an in-depth conversation with the CEO of Resolve, the member advantage company, and what they do all day long is review physician contracts. So that's their expertise. And he said, I think that is a misconception and it's not true. He said, because uh, the employer wants to hire you. And so they need to do whatever it takes to get you in. And if they're not willing to be flexible, then physicians are going to walk away from being employed at their organization. And so he said that might, it might be true in some cases, but then you also have to be consider what are the things that you will walk away from. And um, you will never get those things if you don't ask. So please, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Prioritize, take a look at what the things are in your contract. And if I don't know, want a certain CME allowance, or you want to make sure that you're only working at this clinic instead of these, or you need these hours, ask for it. And if they're not willing to negotiate, maybe that's not the place you want to work. And
Great, Angie. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, and never be afraid to ask someone, an experienced healthcare attorney, to look at your contract before you sign it. And I will also say that, if there's something that you really care about doing, like if you want to deliver babies, and you try to get it in your contract if you can, because when you are taking your first job, uh, make sure it's something that allows you to practice the scope and breadth and depth of family medicine that you're looking for. Because if you don't, then of course, when you move to the next place and you haven't done it for a while, it can be more difficult to get those privileges. So really think about that as you are thinking about your first job or your first contract.
Angie, thank you so much. Just a reminder, all this wonderful information starts at aafp.org/worth. Um, whether you are looking to figure out what your worth is now or what it might be in other places, please use that dashboard, and we will look forward to sharing it with our practicing members to add to the data sets starting in August, and an updated dashboard later on in 2025. Angie, thank you so very much for your time today, and have
Thank
a
you for
great
having
day.
me. You too. Thanks a lot.